1 o'clock. Today, August 15th, is our tax funding and programming meeting, and we'll call the meeting to order. First is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Robbie, any changes, or are we good on the agenda?
The agenda's good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Robbie. All right, next is approval of the June 20th committee minutes. Any discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll need a motion and a second.
Chair, this is Robert Ellis. I'll move to approve.
Thanks, Robert. Do we have a second?
Elaine Kutsukos will second.
Thank you, Elaine. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote via roll call. I'll turn it over to Robbie.
Thank you, Chair. OJ, Anoka County. Harbor County, Chapik. Or sorry, Dakota County, Chapik. Harbor County. Hennepin County, Piper.
Aye.
Scott County, Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Dahlheimer.
Aye.
Bloomington, oh, I have an alternate for, yeah. Anyone here from Bloomington? Ellis, Eden Prairie.
Aye.
Ridley, Coast Lucher. Lakeville, Omi. Minneapolis, Coster.
Aye.
Plymouth, Chair Thompson.
Aye.
St. Paul, Weber.
Aye. And also, it doesn't look like I was marked as present for in the minutes, and I was at the meeting.
My apologies. Chair, how do we handle that type of amendment?
Yeah, I see that as just a minor one that staff can fix. So.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Metro Transit, Genowiak. Suburban Transit, Shull.
Here.
Yeah, no worries. DNR, Spooner Walsh. Minda Bike Ped, Turner Bargain. Minda Metro District, Tag.
Aye.
Minda State Aid, Brown.
Aye.
MPCA, Dickerson.
Aye.
MTS, McCouncil MTS, Hinneker.
Aye.
And Tab Coordinator, Kutsukos.
Aye.
Chair, 13 ayes. Motion passes.
All right, thank you, Robbie. Next item is a public comment on committee business. Staff, are you aware of anybody signed up for this portion?
Chair, we have no one here for public comment.
Okay, perfect. Then we'll jump down to the tab report. I'll hand it off to Elaine.
Thank you, Chair. TAB met on July 17th. For the Chair's report, Hovland reported that the Regional Solicitation Policymaker Work Group met prior to the TAB meeting. For the MnDOT report, Connie Seagen reported that a lot of construction is going on in the metro area and they are coordinating with local agencies, and the number of fatalities has gotten worse. There was no MPCA report. For the Metropolitan Airports Commission report, Kyle Crimmins reported that domestic air travel is 105% of the 2019 level, and international travel is 101%. And over the July 4th weekend, TSA reported 50,000 people through security each day. And Terminal 2 travel is up 23% over last year. Road construction on Highway 55, I-494, Highway 62, and Highway 5 is causing disruptions, and to look at the website to check on travel times. And they installed Pentair air water refill stations at MSP and have had 100,000 refills in a month and a half. For the Metropolitan Council report, Deb Barbeau reported that the council and FTA have prepared supplemental draft environmental impact statement for the Blue Line extension, and it is out for public comment. And comments were accepted through August 6th. The TPP will be released for public comment after council action, so that just was released. For the Suburban Transit Association, Gary Hansen reported that the suburban transit providers' ridership continues to increase, particularly special services. And VTA provided more than 30,000 rides over 8 days of emergency shuttle service to Valley Fair due to flooding of their parking lot. And Southwest Transit is purchasing autonomous vehicles for use in its Prime Ride on Demand service. It is anticipated that during the first couple of years, an operator will be on board to assist riders as needed. For business items, TAP approved 2 streamlined tip amendments that went through TAC. One was on MnDOT's Minnesota 121, a mill and overlay project, and the other was the I-94 bridge over Wright County Road 19. They approved the regionally significant tip amendment request for US 10 expansion project that did go out for public comment and then was approved. They released the draft 2050 transportation policy plan for public comment. They approved the project selection for the 2024 Highway Safety Improvement Program and also the regional solicitation. And they approved a project hybrid option that included a merging of the safety and bike heavy or pedestrian heavy projects, and it included funding 17 active transportation projects. And then they had some information updates on the regional solicitation evaluation. Chair Hublin reported on the policymaker work group, and Glenn Johnson reported on the active transportation work group. And that's my report.
Thank you, Elaine. Any questions for Elaine? All right, seeing none, we will move on. Thanks again, Elaine. And moving on to business. So our first action item today is the Southwest Transit scope change. And I will hand it over to staff to provide a brief summary. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. I had to unshare my screen because I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself. So we're starting with the scope change request, and we do have somebody from Southwest Transit, Stephanie Alexander, here to answer questions about the project, current project and or proposed project if they come up. But I'm going to talk a bit about where we're at now and summarize this report. So the Southwest Transit is requesting a change of the scope to adjust service to allow its removal of the Golden Triangle and add the airport to its Mall of America service project. And that's the recommended motion we have here from staff to allow for that. And so this is a project that was awarded in the 2016 solicitation, which does seem like a long time ago. And I think with COVID and other things that have happened, that's why we're seeing it at this stage. But they were awarded about $5.5 million in the transit expansion category to operate fixed route service along I-494 from Southwest Station Eden Prairie to the Mall of America. And the service was planned to operate from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. Mondays through Saturdays, and to provide service beginning at the mall intersections adjacent to I-494 Highway 100, I-94 in France, I-94 in Penn, and the Golden Triangle terminating at Southwest Station. So Southwest, as part of this, was given funding to order 8 buses. Those buses have been ordered But since then, Southwest has analyzed the project and the ridership along the I-94 corridor, and customer needs have changed dramatically since pre-COVID days of 2016. And the analysis has resulted in the below 3 requests that we've bolded here. One is to remove the Golden Triangle from the service area. And the reason for that is that only 1,201 linked passenger trips were taken from the Golden Triangle to other service areas. And then existing ridership from Southwest Transit Prime microtransit service shows that 45.3% of rides beginning in the Golden Triangle were within the city of Eden Prairie. And Southwest thinks that removing this service makes sense because it's kind of redundant to have it, and Prime service will still serve it. Secondly, request extending service to Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport terminals. And this is because there's been a big increase in rides they're providing to the airport, 719.5% apparently. And then request 3 is that they would increase their service days and hours from 5 to 7 p.m. I'm sorry, 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. with 30-minute frequency. And then weekend service, 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. with 45-minute frequency. So our analysis, the first thing we do, even in, actually in almost any situation, is look at the scoring and how this project would have, or this application would have performed as is being applied for now. And really it would be almost certain that it would have been funded. The score that it got, a 513, wouldn't change much. I would guess it would have been a little bit higher. It's 75 points higher than the highest scoring unfunded project in the transit expansion category. So there's no reason to look at the scoring and say, yeah, this wouldn't have performed well. Now the budget part, funding is a little more interesting. They're not asking for more federal funding because it's not really something that's allowed. The project cost is going up a bit in operating. So $575,225. And that would be covered locally without federal funding. And so you have a couple of options. First, you could require removal of a portion of the federal funds based on removing the Golden Triangle and then putting the project over in the over to the airport. The other one would be allowed for full retention of federal funds because the microtransit service has been added. So the Golden Triangle is still going to be served. It doesn't really remove the ability for people to travel there. Also, this is a situation where if the funding were to be taken away, the region wouldn't really get it back because the project is underway. So this isn't really, based on the purchase of the buses, the project is underway. So this isn't really like a highway project where nothing gets going before we get to this point. So there's really no winners here if we don't retain the federal funds. So that for that reason, the staff recommends approval of the project and retention of federal funds because it's seemingly a better project and it doesn't totally leave the Golden Triangle out of the picture. So with that, I stand for questions on the process or the project, but we also have a representative from Southwest to talk about the project if needed.
All right, thank you, Joe, for the presentation and overview. So yes, it looks like Stephanie and then also Eric Hansen is available as well. Stephanie or Eric, do you have anything to add before we open it up to committee discussion?
Eric, do you have anything to add?
I don't have anything to add. Stephanie is going to do most of the talking. I'm actually on the phone because I'm driving with my daughter to college right now. So I'm not in a great position to answer questions, but that's why Stephanie's here. But thank you. We appreciate your consideration. We think we agree that it's a much improved project, and I think it's going to make a big difference for connectivity for people in our region.
All right, thank you, Eric, and best of luck on the trip. And Stephanie, anything to add before we open it up here for questions?
No. The only thing I guess I would add is that if you take a look at the regional transportation map, we are actually filling a pretty significant gap along the corridor there between Eden Prairie Station down through 494. So I don't know if we necessarily mentioned that in our amendment, but I think I'll just add that. But otherwise, no.
Okay, thank you. All right, now I will open it up to committee members, and it looks like Cole, you're up first.
Yeah, thanks. Excuse me. Question for, I think, Southwest. This doesn't I don't think affect the request, but I imagine one of the reasons that this was at Golden Triangle was because when this was applied for 8 years ago, it was going to be a Green Line extension station, hopefully open by now. But I'm curious, from your long-term vision for this service, would you reconsider a connection to Golden Triangle once that station is operational in, 4 years or so? And is that part of the reason that it's just doesn't make sense right now?
Yeah, so I mean, we will always reconsider how we serve the residents, how we can serve the customers. So I would definitely say yes, we would absolutely reconsider it if we felt that the ridership would be increasing or needed there. So that's the first part of the question. And then the second part is really, yes, we did an analysis of our current prime ridership, which is what is currently serving there. And our prime is actually what is currently going to the airport now. And there's just a very, very low percentage of those riders that are even leaving Eden Prairie from the Golden Triangle or to the Golden Triangle. And so we just, looking through the analysis, found that it isn't really a beneficial stop for very, very many people at all. It's very, very, very few people that would be using it from that area. We do have another project in addition to this that is first and last mile stop from Southwest Station that includes the Green Line. And so we do have our first and last mile from the Green Line. And our current prime system does take into effect all of the train stops within Eden Prairie as well. And so that would include the stop within the Golden Triangle, the stop up by Optum, the stop over, and then I think there's one more train stop that our prime currently does take into consideration. Does that answer the question, Cole?
Yeah, and I think, Golden Triangle is an employment destination, and there's, I guess maybe my follow-up question, because I don't know this super well, is the proposed scope change then not have any direct connections to the Green Line extension as currently proposed?
No, it would still connect with the Green Line extension at Southwest Station.
Okay, that helps.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, yep, it still connects with the Green Line station. And if, like I said, we definitely would look at expanding or adding stops in the future if we felt that was needed. However, currently I can say that if somebody were, say, coming from the airport on the 494 corridor and needed to get to the Golden Triangle, they still can get there through all of our services. There just would be a connection at Southwest Station to catch a prime to go over there. So it's not that they're not able to get there at all. There just would be that one connection if they needed it. And again, for our analysis, we're not finding that there is a ridership currently in that area. A lot of the businesses that were working in 2016, they don't even exist there anymore. So that's, it's kind of a post-COVID world situation that we have changed it for.
All right, thank you for that response, Stephanie. And I saw one more hand go up. Elaine, was that you?
Yeah, it was me. It was a few years ago. We had worked with Southwest Transit on an informal scope change for having trips to the airport on an on-call basis. So that was going to be an option that had been approved internally. So this is just going a step further than that. That now changes the termini, where when it was an on-call, it would not have been a terminal change and required a scope change, formal scope change. But making it for all trips, that was one reason we requested that they come in for a formal scope change.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that background. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea that we need to retain the money for our region here, and looks like some good changes were made based on analysis. Nathan, you got your hand up?
Yeah, very minor comment. Just I think it'd be helpful on some of these submittals to have a map. I'm having a hard time tracking some of the back and forth conversations. So some of these might be helpful for staff preparing these for others not intricately involved to have a map attached. Thanks.
Yep, thank you for that comment. All right, anybody else? If not, we need a motion and a second. And again, the recommendation, the staff recommendation is approval of a scope change request to adjust the service area to remove the golden triangle, add the airport, and increase the operating time for its Mall of America service, and then of course retaining all of the funding.
Chair, this is Robert Ellis. I'll make that motion.
All right, thank you, Robert. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Dahlheimer from Washington County will second.
Great, Dahlheimer seconds. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will vote by roll call. Robbie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, OJ. Carver County. Dakota County. Hennepin County, Piper.
Aye.
Scott County, Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Dahlheimer.
Aye.
Eden Prairie, Ellis.
Aye.
Ridley, Kozlucher. Lakeville, Omi. Minneapolis, Coster.
Aye.
Plymouth, Chair Thompson.
Aye.
St. Paul, Weber.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Janowiak. Suburban Transit, Shoal.
Aye.
DNR, Spooner, Walsh. MnDOT Bike Ped, Turner, Bargain. MnDOT Metro District, Tag.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Brown.
Aye.
MPCA, Dickerson.
Aye.
Council MTS, Henniker.
Aye.
Tab Coordinator, Kutsukos.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes with 13 ayes.
All right. Thank you, Robbie, and thank you, Stephanie and Eric, for making yourself available to answer questions and provide information. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yep. All right. Next item on the agenda is the scope change policy update. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. So we have a couple of policy updates to talk about today, and we're going to, I am sorry, I'm looking for an email from a member. Got a reference in a second. Okay, we're going to talk about them separately. They were both discussed at length by a policy working group that we put together last fall, I think. But given that they're very different, they have very different types of changes going on, it makes a lot of sense, I think, to vote on them separately. So this is the scope change policy. And so what I think what I know prompted the discussion of the scope change policy and the possible need to change it was that, as many of you who have been around realize, the majority of scope changes that we've seen over the last maybe 3 or 4 years have been, I have a project that has 5 pieces, and one of those pieces is being taken out, moved to some other project, and being done on the ground just as it was supposed to, but just being done at a slightly different time in a slightly different, by a different applicant maybe. And the habit of this committee, TAC and TAB, has been to recommend approval, not recommend taking away funding, because everything on the ground to the general public looks the same. And it became sort of a formality of sorts to to go through that process, and nothing interesting ever particularly happened there. So I'm going to summarize some of the changes that are shown, and then below that we have the policy and track changes, and then a policy with the changes accepted. We also have the current policy on the web agenda as well. So the attached policy tracks changes that don't need to go through the formal scope change process. And that would be changes that would things that would be approved at a staff level. Federal funding is retained, as I just alluded to, because on the ground result would remain intact. And there are exceptions to doing that administratively. And that's if the value of the transition projects exceeds a certain amount. You'll see that in a table here. Because I think there are some nervousness amongst the committee members of just sort of allowing for big amounts of money to go through unchecked. And then if the project that's absorbing the project is not in a TIP or not in a federal agency approved capital program within the next 4 years. And the reason that's in there is because members are very comfortable with saying, oh yeah, if you're having a piece of your project done by somebody else, that's fine, but not if it's probably going to be done in 10 years, right? We want to really A, know that it's happening, and B, know that it's happening in a reasonable amount of time. And so that was the solution that we came up with. And then if nothing changes about the on-the-ground project, the federal funds are retained, and then we don't have a scoring analysis needed because that feeds into the same questions that we had, which is, well, nothing on the ground is being changed. Why are we analyzing a scoring piece of it? So we're basically saying, by doing this, you're not changing anything, at least not for practical purposes. And that seems to be where the committee was at. A few other things were looked at during the process, where the whole policy is looked at, and a few other changes are highlighted in these 3 bullets here. There's a federal funding reduction resulting from a reduction of project elements determined to be less than 50,000 would be retained. And the reason for that is we get a lot of smaller things coming through that really would be administrative in nature. But I and Elaine and the staff was just really hesitant to want to bring through anything that was going to allow for retaining of federal funds while something was being reduced. I was always very nervous to do that. What would happen is we go through these processes and they'd say, well, this is the kind of thing that, would kind of result in a reduction, but because of the small amount of money, it's not worth the effort. So we came up with $50,000. Admittedly, there's not a lot of magic to that, but it's a small amount that we thought that usually we don't do anything about that amount or smaller amount. Also, informal scope changes can have federal reduction up to $100,000 completed administratively for the same reason. That's really, I kind of flip-flop those a little bit. That's really the informal scope changes. And that's the amount that I take that back. So the 50,000 is retention. This confuses me to this day, so I apologize if it confuses others. Maybe it's just me. In this case, we could take away up to $100,000 of funding for something that's being done. So probably in that $50,000 to $100,000 range without running it through the committee. It's another piece where a smaller amount of money is being dealt with without going through a committee process for something that appears to be formal. So I know those 2 bullets, I just confused them in my own mind, so I apologize for that, but I haven't found a better way to display it. And then a clarification that changing from a transit project to a vehicle, changing a transit project from a vehicle purchase to leasing vehicles is not subject to scope change. It's a really small piece, unconnected to almost anything else we've talked about. And the reason for that is that there had been a recent request that did that, and the applicant had said acquire vehicles. They didn't really clarify it, but that brought up the question of, hey, do we care if they change from leasing to purchase or vice versa? And the answer was no, so we did put that in there. And so there's a lot of changes. This is the track changes that are reflected. This is that little vehicle purchase question there in that first line. And then this bigger bullet here, the long one, is the one that kind of talks about moving project elements from project A to project Z over there, but everything on the ground being the same. If there is enough project value being removed to fit this table 1, then we would still bring it through the process, because that makes it sort of a bigger lift or a bigger effort. And I think there is a little bit of nervousness when there's big things happening to do those things administratively. But if they don't fit that table, if they're less than $1 million, then, 1 million, 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 then the removal threshold of 20%. If they don't meet that 20%, you're not going to see it. It's going to be done administratively. So I know there's a lot of kind of funny language in here, and a couple other clarifying points down here. Requests that do not result in a on the ground change don't need a scoring analysis that I addressed here. Clarifying language. This is that $50,000 where retaining would be happen if it was less than $50,000. One more piece, and this comes from a TAB member. We were going to talk about this at a TAB meeting, and it kind of got bumped from the agenda and ended up being about a 2-minute item instead of about a 15-minute item. So we never quite got there, but we did have a TAB member make this comment. So I'm going to bring it up and see if people agree with that comment. If not, we won't do anything, and they can talk about it at TAB. But that comment was related to this piece here that says slightly changing a bike or pedestrian trail route alignment while still making the connections. This is a administrative change, and what that member wants is to say that it doesn't wants us to add that this does not include changing a separated or protected bikeway to a on-street painted bike lane or boulevard. And folks are happy with that or agree with that. I would like to put it in there just to have it prepared for TAB. If not, we won't do it. So I would actually say, and I didn't think to do this in the motion, that the motion would be to recommend approval of the updated policy with that added. I know that was a lot, and perhaps I needed to slow down, but now I'm here for questions about this. And I know also a lot of you in this meeting were part of that process. So if anybody has anything to add, by all means, please do so.
All right, Joe, for the trail one, the TAB member's comment was they don't want there to be like an off-street bike or trail path and then the applicant just painting like a Shero or something on the roadway. Is that the point there?
Yeah, because these are bullets that would say what would trigger a administrative. So I don't think, without going through the TAB process, the member's saying, don't go through the TAB process if you're going to really sort of reduce the, what's the term? I don't know. You change it from off street to on street and sort of diminish it. And I think that's how we sort of handle it as a staff anyway, but I think it makes sense to codify it because you could interpret it a different way, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Right. Any comments or questions? I think are there a couple members on this committee, Joe, that were on the subcommittee for this?
Yes, I believe so. Although I have to admit, I got in late. I missed a lot of the roll call, and then I was preparing for this in the last roll call, so I don't know who's here.
Yeah,
but there were members here.
Okay. Maybe we'll start with any of those members that were on the subcommittee for the scope change policy update, if you want to weigh in or have any comments first.
Chair, this is Jason from Hennepin.
Yeah, Jason.
Thanks, Chair. I participated in a couple meetings and definitely think these changes to the policy is an excellent starting point. Maybe two things that really resonated with me. First, kind of the process for the agency accepting the scope of work. So whether that's the larger project or the second project where it makes more sense to accept that additional scope of work, for example, an intersection, kind of what the approval process would be to kind of put that into reality. And so we talked about whether that needs to be a cooperative agreement or just a support letter. And I think we landed on just asking for a letter of support or acknowledgement, which felt like the appropriate level of approval. And then the second thing that resonated with me was the thresholds that we show on some tables. And I think as a county and probably cities as well, you know, we really encourage Met Council to consider larger thresholds. We kind of view traffic signals as the proxy. And, you know, the cost of a traffic signal replacement has increased substantially since I started my career not too long ago. And just really want to make project development easier rather than harder for our city and county peers. And, you know, just really urge Met Council to consider larger thresholds than that $100,000 value that's currently shown for not requiring kind of that more formal process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those comments, Jason. appreciate it. Anyone else? Just open it up to everyone.
Mr. Chair, is Colleen, are you here? Because I thought you had something, or is that in the other policy that you had something?
Joe, that's the program year policy
Okay.
that I have something. Yep.
Well, we'll hear from you later then.
I do agree with Tab's comment on the off-street bike to just a striped painted line on road. I was kind of surprised at that last project that asked for that change. We actually at state aid told them we didn't think that that would get approved. So I am in favor of their comment regarding that.
All right, thank you, Colleen. Nathan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just want to echo some of what Jason said, is appreciate all the staff time that went into this, collaborating the meetings, getting everyone there, putting it together, and a lot of the long, technical, sometimes very complex conversations. So just acknowledging that and all the work that went into it. I was hoping for a little bit more clarification on what you said, Joe, because you did go fast. Because in the informal scope changes, the first bullet you said, alluding to slightly changing the bike or pedestrian trail alignment while still making the major connections. But then if you look at the formal scope changes, it looks like there's a similar comment of like changing from on street to off, changing design from on to off. Like, is that already covered in what's here, or are we just add some clarification there, just because I if I'm confused, maybe others are.
That's a good question, Nathan. And I actually, I do think that this covers it. I don't think it hurts to add that. And when the comment was made, I never responded to it or anything. If folks really think that would be redundant, we don't have to put it there, and I can explain that to him, the member, or at Tab. But I guess you're right. Like, if we as a staff were to accept that as an administrative action, we'd sort of be violating this bullet here. So it's a good point. You could argue that it's redundant, but that wouldn't be the only redundant piece in this policy.
All right, so how I read that, so what you have highlighted here, Joe, that would trigger an official formal scope change, correct?
Correct. Yep.
All right, I mean, and then if we adjust the informal scope change, be consistent with the tab, then I think it all speaks with one voice. So
I see Elaine's hand up, and maybe she has a different take than I did on that.
Well, I look at the first bullet that's highlighted right here when it talks about a slight changing the alignment. So if it's not moving the full trail from one to the other, it's the alignment itself gets adjusted a little bit in little minor segments of it. Not the full trail.
Right. But I think I wasn't at the tab meeting, but I assume the tab member alluded to if you have an off-road bike and then you have a segment that goes on road and then back off-road, they don't want that. They want it consistent. So if it goes from off-road to on-road, that should trigger the formal scope change. Is that correct, Joe?
Yeah, and this was done by email. It was after the fact. I think maybe even because we had ended up with a shorter info item on this. But I think it might have been in response to a request a few years ago, and this was done in the tab process where a piece of an off-road trail was moved on road, and I think the point was we wouldn't want to see that be done administratively. And I could see how one can interpret this bullet as sort of ignoring that. To Nathan's point, I guess it is covered in that other one. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with mentioning it here, but or clarifying it here. But I think that was the point, was to make sure that those are at least done formally.
And I think this is talking about the alignment, not that it's shifting from one to the other either. So it could stay all off road and the alignment change, or it could stay all on road and the alignment changes. That wouldn't change how it probably would have scored if you modified the alignment, where when it changes from one to the other, especially from off-road to on-road, the safety score would have changed. And that might be the distinguishing.
Right, so that bullet in my mind has always meant the actual alignment of the trail. So you have point A and point B begin and end, and they have a map in their application that shows a route. And during project development, they may have to change that alignment of that route a little bit to go around some impacts, or maybe there's some public input that changes the alignment a little bit. So it's just changing that route in between those two endpoints slightly, but still making all the major connections. That's what that bullet means to me. It's not on road to off road because that's in the formal.
Okay.
Well, it's up to the committee if we want to tell that at tab, or, you know, in theory, I suppose if you're making it something in the middle of the, in the middle of points A and B, you could do that by taking it off road briefly. I'm not going to die on this hill. I don't think it hurts to add it, but,
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that we all interpret it the proper way, and maybe you can talk to the tab member and say, hey, clearly here in the formal, what you're concerned with triggers the formal scope change. So if it's not broke, don't fix it. I don't know that we should just change it based on one member's comment, and maybe you could just recap the committee's discussion that it's clearly outlined as a bullet in the formal scope change to address the concern.
yeah, I can do that. It was done by email. I can respond to that and just say, this is what happened, and they can choose whether they want to push it at tab or not.
Yeah.
Chair, I'd just like to recognize, like, I think you're seeing what I'm seeing is like, if it's already more black and white, let's try not to overcomplicate it and put it in two different sections. I think it probably reads fine the way it is because it's clearly triggered in formal.
Right.
In the formal section.
Yeah, my concern is, and if we tweak it a little bit, it might cause some unintended consequence. And sounds like Colleen doesn't need anything. She knows how to interpret this, and so yeah, I agree. All right, so we need a first and foremost, thank you to staff and the committee members that spent a lot of time on this. It is confusing, so I'm glad that you know how to interpret it, and assume we will do so as we move forward here. And we will need a motion and a second.
And then
Brown
could
moves
go.
approval. Oops, sorry.
Go ahead, Colleen.
Brown moves approval of the policy.
All right, Brown moves. Do we have a second?
Kuchikos will second.
All right, thank you, Elaine. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote by roll call. Robbie?
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County. Carver County. Dakota County. Hennepin County Piper.
Aye.
Scott County Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County Dahlheimer.
Aye.
Eden Prairie Ellis. Eden Prairie Ellis, I didn't hear a vote.
He had to step away.
Oh, okay. Ridley Coast Lucher. Lakeville Omi. Minneapolis Coster.
Aye.
Plymouth Chair Thompson.
Aye.
St. Paul Weber.
Aye.
Metro Transit Janawiak. Urban Transit Shoal.
Aye.
DNR Spooner Walsh. Mindet Bike Ped. MnDOT Metro District tag.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid Brown.
Aye.
MPCA Dickerson.
Aye.
Met Council MTS Henniger.
Aye.
Advocated Coordinator Kutsugos.
Aye.
The motion passes 12 ayes.
Rob.
Chair, I hate to do this, but what's a quorum at this meeting?
Well,
Hey, yeah, Joe, you're asking too many questions. Motion passes.
we can get, Chair, we can get Ellis's vote when he returns. We could have 13 ayes, but 12 is a quorum.
That's all I need. Okay.
Yeah,
Isn't it once a meeting starts at quorum, it stays at quorum? I would use that.
see, I like your thinking, Elaine. That's all right. So motion passes. Again, these are all just recommendations to go to TAC and then ultimately TAP for final approval. Last item on the agenda is program year policy update. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. So in the chat, I did put the group members that participated, and this is the same. So this is a recommendation from the same working group that worked on the previous policy, and it was brought up for similar reasons. What we kept seeing was what we have is currently is a program year policy that allows for a one-time 1-year advancement of a project due to circumstances that occur during the process, you know, working with a railroad or whatever, as long as it can be shown that once we give you that one-time 1-year extension, that you can pretty confidently get it done the next year. And what's been happening a lot is thanks again to similar situations, projects being sort of enveloped into other projects, usually a smaller project into a larger project, but not by definition does it have to be that way. You'll see a project kind of be stuck because of something that somebody else is doing. Maybe it's MnDOT, not always MnDOT, needing to be out a couple years. Hey, we're totally ready to do this project, but because of some other project, we're not doing it. And it makes a lot more sense to the public if the bigger project can suck that project in, do it 2 years from now, rather than tear up the same piece of the same area twice. So practically speaking, once again, I think you had these committees all say, yeah, this makes sense. It provides, it's allowing for more than one does sort of provide additional risk to the program. The kind of funny secret is that the 1-year thing, going 2 years instead of 1 year, doesn't really increase the risk of the program. It just increases the incentive, the disincentive to do 1 year, to do more than 1 year, or to do this at all. So members kind of came in with the same feelings that the traditional kind of program year extension should still be a 1 year, one time thing. But if there's something outside of the control of the applicant related to another project, that's when we can look at ways to sort of go against that tradition of rules. So the changes highlighted include clarification language that these unvetted applications are coming in at the application deadline. And what I mean by that is, boy, it's really kind of small in here. But the point is that we have this June 30th, New Year's Eve application deadline that we don't want somebody, you know, first telling us or Colleen about it on the 29th and then saying, oh, no, you have to, you know, have yourself ready to sell your case that you're going to be able to do this the next year. We have exceptions to the one-time 1 year limitations due to circumstances related to another project that are built in there. We have, this might be the toughest or most controversial piece, removal of the MnDOT score sheet for approval. So you might remember that score sheet, and there's a couple of problems with it. One, big picture problem is it doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense all the time. It rewards you for having dealt with the railroad. Well, if you don't have a railroad to deal with, you might not get those points. And Colleen can clarify if I'm right when I say that. But also, it kind of disincentivizes you to ask for this request months in advance, because right now in June, or it's not June, but in June, you might only have 6 points. So then you have to wait until like fall to get your 7th point to meet the 7 points. Meantime, MnDOT and our staff hasn't learned that this is happening and hasn't had as much opportunity to deal with distributing funds. So we don't want to disincentivize looking at that early if you know that you're going to be extending. We think that the scores aren't meaningful, the project readiness, the points on the current score sheet are quirky. I kind of already said that. And so what we have is a little more of a less written process where, you know, the applicant will be telling us what their new schedule is and from their experience and trusting that. There's several deadline changes for documentation that are in there, and then reference to requests being placed on the TAB consent agenda. So, and this is kind of funny. It says that TAB is going to see these on consent. Nobody really knew that, so they weren't being on consent. So we've left it in there for now. We're going to see what TAB executive and or the chair think of that. It might be removed. It might be left in there. It doesn't really necessarily concern most of the people in this group. And one more piece is that working group members were discussing federal fund swaps or defederalizations. We had talked about that probably 6 or 7 years ago now and ran into some walls. And they think that's a way to sort of balance some of these years. And most people wanted to see that, but they also agree that it's not really part of this process. So we might revisit this at some point. I think there's definitely some interest in doing so from some of the members. So here's some of the track changes. And once again, we have the track changes and the accepted changes document. You know, clarification. This is a clarification that FHWA is different than FTA. We got the couple of the deadlines I've changed, and Colleen could tell me a little bit more why we did that because we trusted her judgment on that. But we also have this is the main piece right here of why we met exceptions to the 1 year one-time limitations due to what's happening with another application. And then in this this piece we have changing all these April dates to June for environmental document approvals and things like that, just because it's not necessary to have in April. And then we have one clarifying piece here. If project start date will be more than 1 year after the end of the program year, project manager notifies the grants manager and consults with the TAB coordinator to demonstrate ability to complete the project. That's sort of in place of the score sheet. And then down here is a procedure where this information is what is now recommended to be provided: environmental document approval date, plan approval date, right-of-way certification approval date, rather than this other stuff here. And the most important part, perhaps to some of us, is this entire score sheet being crossed out. So let's see. Again, we have other members here, and I know I've already seen Elaine's hand up. I know Colleen had something she wanted to clarify and or change on here. So with that, I would stand for questions, and I know some of you were part of this process.
All right, thank you, Joe. All right, well, yeah, okay, we'll go in that order. We'll go with Elaine and then Colleen on this item.
I was going to say, Joe, if you could go down to where that FTA clarification, you know, that statement that was added, I wanted to provide some input on that.
This one?
Right there, yes. So one of the things with the transit projects that are funded through FTA, they are not able to go through the regular scope change or the program year policy because they could not, if we moved them a year, their funding isn't later and they can't advance construct like other construction projects can. And one of the things, and they also have a flexibility of 5 years from the start of the project, and it allows so they could move that funding. And this is what we've been doing behind the scenes anyway. So we would like to put this in writing. And one of the reasons it's also helpful on our part is when we have earlier funding, we are giving it to the transit providers because so if they applied for a 2026 program year project and we give them 2024 funding, we don't want them having to come back and request program year extensions because they applied for 2026, even though their funding that we gave them is 2024. And so this way they are notifying us when they're starting, and we're telling you don't have to come in for, because we just had a couple coming in for Metro Transit asking for the process. How do you get it in? And it's like, you don't have to, because technically, yes, it's program year 2024-5 funding, but your project that you applied for was 26, and you're helping us out. But we wanted to put something in writing to actually say what's happening on those.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Colleen?
Mr. Chair and Joe, Joe, if you could go back to the FHWA criteria for meeting the sunset or meeting the program policy.
Here?
Instruction, yes.
Oh, here? Okay.
So if you look at the 1, 2, 3rd bullet, oh, you
This one?
already, okay. So final construction plans need to be approved, and then the rest of it should all be lined out. These 4 standards, eligibility, funding, and structural design is one signature block that we have, but the actual approval needs to happen. That's the second signature block by June 1st in order for us to authorize. The other language was in there from the April 1st deadline, and that's a benchmark that we use for standards and eligibility review and not final approval. So that's why I want to have that removed.
So in other words, cross out what I've got highlighted currently?
Yep. The plans have to actually be approved by June 1st so that we can ask for authorization.
Gotcha. Kind of.
All right. Any other items, Colleen?
Well, yeah, the reason that we went from the April 1 date to the June 1st date is because June 1st is the actual deadline for us to submit for authorization. The April date came from an old deadline that our central office uses to have stuff submitted. Having that part of the policy, there's many projects that go past April 1st for their plans and right away, and we don't want to have to go through a special extension request or even take away federal funds because they can't meet April. We have all the way up to June to get all that work done. So that's why we went to June with the actual deadline.
Okay, that's helpful. Glad we are cleaning that up. Right. Any...
By me, though, it could probably use the motion, I suppose.
What's that, Joe?
That's fine by me, though. It could probably make for a more confusing motion. Think about how to work that into the motion.
I can read out a possible motion. Want to make sure we get to any other people that were on the committee or any other members that have any additional comments on this item. All right, seeing none, a potential motion could be that the Funding and Programming Committee recommend approval of the updated program year policy and that final construction plans are approved by June 1 as a change. So that would reflect crossing standards, eligibility, funding, and structural.
If that's added in as a, if that's going to be crossed out, that becomes part of the changes too.
Yeah, so I think at TAC, it wouldn't even spell that out. It would just say we recommend this, and then that will be crossed out. TAC members won't have to know about this minutia.
That works for me. So just a motion as proposed with reflecting the comments by Colleen. So that, yeah, you're saying that doesn't need to be in the motion, but
that just becomes one of the changes.
Yep.
It's in this motion, but it won't be in TAC's motion.
Yeah, it's almost like Colleen just redlined that for us.
Yes.
Well, if Colleen would have responded to an email from Joe earlier, it would have been in there.
Okay, so we can
I apologize.
we can both thank you and then blame you.
There you go.
All right, do we have a motion and a second on this?
Not as of yet.
I think Sukas will make a motion to approve the changes to the program year policy.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Brown second.
Bagwell second.
Ooh, I think Brown got that one. So we have Elaine move the motion, Brown seconds. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll vote by roll call. I'll turn it over to Robbie.
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County. Harbor County. Dakota County. Hennepin County Piper.
Aye.
Scott County Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County Dahlheimer.
Aye.
Eden Prairie Ellis. Ridley Coast Lucher. Lakeville Omi. Minneapolis Coster.
Aye.
Plymouth Chair Thompson.
Aye.
St. Paul Weber.
Aye.
Metro Transit Janowiak. Urban Transit Shoal.
Aye.
DNR Spooner Walsh. Indot Bike Ped Turner Bargain. Indot Metro District Tag.
Aye.
Indot State Aid Brown.
Aye.
MPCA Dickerson.
Aye.
Met Council MTS Henniker.
Aye.
Tab Coordinator Kutsukos.
Aye.
And the motion passes with 12 ayes.
All right, thank you, Robbie. That concludes our business for today. Are there any information or other business items of staff or committee members? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 2:03. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.